A profound and spreading sense of crisis has enveloped the highest level of the United States government as officials grapple with the shocking speed of the Ukrainian military's collapse across several critical fronts. The carefully managed narrative of a stable, attritional conflict has been obliterated in a matter of hours by a series of coordinated and overwhelmingly successful Russian offensive. This sudden reversal of fortune has sent a shockwave through the White House, the Pentagon, and the intelligence community, forcing a desperate and hurried reevaluation of a strategy that now appears fundamentally flawed. The atmosphere within the Trump administration, once characterized by a confident projection of strength, has reportedly shifted to one of grim urgency and controlled alarm. The intricate tapestry of assumption that underpin American policy toward the conflict, assumptions about Russian capabilities, Ukrainian resilience, and the effectiveness of Western aid, has unraveled with breathtaking speed. Intelligence agencies are now in a frantic race against time to understand the scope of the disaster and to provide policymakers with accurate assessment on a battlefield that is changing by the minute. The situation is far more than a simple tactical setback. It represents a potential strategic catastrophe that threatens to upend the geopolitical landscape of Eastern Europe and challenge the very foundations of American credibility on the world stage. The suddenness of the Ukrainian collapse has left Washington in a reactive posture, struggling to formulate a coherent response to a crisis that is escalating with terrifying momentum. The initial reports filtering into the intelligence community were so dire that they were initially met with disbelief. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard and Director of the Central Intelligence Agency John Radcliffe were reportedly roused in the pre-dawn hours to receive a series of cascading alerts from listening posts and satellite reconnaissance assets. The data painted a grim and unambiguous picture. Russian forces employing a new and devastatingly effective combinations of electronic warfare, overwhelming artillery barrage, and fast-moving armored spearhead had achieved operational surprise and were exploiting their breakthrough with ruthless efficiency. The belief that Ukraine's deep and layered defensive lines could hold for months, if not years, was proven to be a catastrophic miscalculation. Intelligence analysts are now poring over data, trying to piece together how this happened. A primary focus is on the apparent failure to detect the massing of Russian operational reserve and their novel use of sophisticated jamming technology that appeared to blind Ukrainian command and control system at the crucial moment of the assault. The success of the Russian deception has prompted an immediate and uncomfortable internal review within the intelligence community, with questions being asked about potential blind spots in collection methods and an over-reliance on Ukrainian reporting, which may have been overly optimistic. Gabbard has ordered a full-spectrum review of all intelligence streams related to the Russian military to determine if this tactical evolution is a localized phenomenon or represent a broader and more dangerous shift in Russian military doctrine that could have implications for NATO itself. The shockwaves from the intelligence failure quickly reached the Pentagon, where Secretary of Defense Peter Hegseth convened an emergency meeting with the Joint Chief of Staff. The mood was described as somber and professional, but laced with intense frustration. Military planners who had been working for months to calibrate aid package to sustain a long war of attrition were now confronted with the possibility that there might not be a stable front to supply. The logistical challenges, already immense, have now become nearly insurmountable in some sector. Report from the field spoke of Ukrainian units being cut off from their supply lines, forced to abandon heavy equipment, and in some cases dissolving under the pressure of the Russian advance. Hegseth, a fervent advocate for projecting American strength, is now facing the harsh reality of the limits of that strength when applied indirectly. The debate within the Department of Defense has shifted from what type of equipment to send in the long term to what, if anything, can be done in the next 48 to 72 hours to prevent a complete rout. Options being frantically discussed include the immediate airlift of advanced anti-tank and anti-aircraft munitions directly to airfield in western Ukraine, assuming they remain secure. There is also discussions of sharing more sensitive real-time targeting data with the Ukrainian High Command, a move that carries its own risk of compromising sources and methods, but one that is now seen as a necessary gamble. The core problem, as one senior military official reportedly noted, is that no amount of advanced weaponry can fix a collapsed command structure or a breakdown in unit cohesion, which appear to be happening in multiple sectors simultaneously. This escalating sense of military and intelligence panic set the stage for a tense emergency meeting of the National Security Council, presided over by President Donald Trump. The president was reportedly furious, demanding to know how American intelligence could have been caught so flat-footed and why the billions of dollars in military aid had failed to prevent this disaster. He directed much of his frustration at his top advisors, creating a charged atmosphere in the Situation Room. Secretary of State Marco Rubio argued passionately that this was not the time for blame, but for decisive action. He presented the case that the collapse was a direct result of previous hesitations to provide Ukraine with the most advanced long-range weapon system, a policy he had long opposed. Rubio advocated for an immediate and dramatic escalation of support, including the provision of weapons that could strike deep into Russian territory to disrupt their logistic and command centers. He argued that the United States must signal to the world, and specifically to Moscow, that it will not permit a Ukrainian defeat, whatever the cost. He warned that anything less than a massive and unequivocal show of American resolve would be interpreted as weakness, inviting further aggressions. His position was strongly supported by Secretary of Defense Hegseth, who presented a list of potential military aid package that could be authorized immediately, emphasizing that time was of the essence. However, this calls for escalation was met with significant pushback from other members of the cabinet, highlighting the deep division within the Trump administration on how to handle the crisis. Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent presented a stark warning about the potential economic consequences of the wider war. He detailed how a major escalation, particularly one involving American weapons striking Russian territory, could trigger a massive spike in global energy prices, disrupt international trade on an unprecedented scale, and potentially plunge the U.S. and global economies into a deep recessions. Bessent's concerns were echoed by Howard Lutnick, the Secretary of Commerce, who noted that many American businesses still had significant, albeit reduced, exposed to the broader European market, which would be devastated by an expanding conflict. The economic team argued for a more cautious approach, emphasizing the need to protect the American economy from the fallout of a European war. Their arguments found a sympathetic ear in President Trump, who has always viewed his presidency through the lens of economic performance and is sensitive to anything that could threaten the financial well-being of his political base. The debate was further complicated by the domestic and legal consideration raised by other key officials. Attorney General Pam Bondi cautioned the Council that any direct involvement of U.S. personnel or any action that could be construed as a direct attack on Russia could have complex legal implications under both domestic and international law. She stressed the need to operate within established legal framework to avoid setting dangerous precedent. Meanwhile, Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem presented a sobering assessment of the potential consequences for the American homeland. He outlined the high probability of retaliatory Russian cyber attack targeting critical infrastructure, such as the power grid, financial system, and transportation network. He also warned of the potential for a new and massive wave of refugees from Ukraine, which could overwhelm European allies and create pressure for the United States to accept a significant number, a politically sensitive issue. The confluence of these economic, legal, and security concerns created a powerful counterweight to the hawkish arguments of Rubio and Hegseth. The meeting reportedly ended without a clear consensus, with President Trump instructing his team to reconvene with more refined option, leaving his administration in a state of suspended animation as the front line continued to crumble. The crisis has also sent tremors through the international diplomatic arena, leaving Secretary of State Rubio in an incredibly difficult position. He has been engaged in a non-stop series of phone calls with his counterparts in Europe and around the world, attempting to project an image of calm and control that is belied by the chaotic reality behind the scene. European allies, particularly those in Eastern Europe who feel most threatened by Russian aggression, are frantically seeking reassurance from Washington. They are terrified that the collapse of Ukraine could be a prelude to further Russian military adventures and are demanding a more robust American response, including the deployment of more U.S. troops to NATO's eastern flank. Conversely, some Western European nations are using the crisis to renew their calls for a diplomatic settlement, arguing that the military options has failed and that it is time to engage with Moscow to prevent an even greater catastrophe. Rubio is therefore caught in a difficult balancing act, trying to hold together a fragile coalition that is being pulled in opposite directions by fear and self-interest. The perceived panic in Washington is eroding his leverage, as allies begin to question whether the United States has the will or the capacity to lead the Western response effectively. The lack of a clear, unified message from the White House is further complicating his effort, leaving allies confused and uncertain about America's true intention. This diplomatic disarray is a gift to Moscow, which has always vowed to exploit divisions within the Western alliance. The crumbling of the Ukrainian front is not just a military victory for Russia. It is a significant diplomatic victory as well, one that threatens to isolate the United States and shatter the unity of the NATO alliance. The world is watching to see how President Trump will navigate this perilous moment, a moment that will undoubtedly define his presidency and shape the future of global security for years to come. Many of my listeners, like 70%, haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel. And so many of you don't even know that you haven't subscribed. And that is actually what makes the show going. It's almost like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask again and again, because it enables us to grow and grow and grow. And we're going for the long haul here. And listen, if this is your first time listening to World Global Conflict, you don't have to subscribe. You guys, your first one's on me. But if you have watched this show before, it's like you are a freeloader now. So all I would ask you is, if you have seen this show before and you like it, help me, help my team here. Hit that subscribe and like button now. And we will continue to build this show for you. That I swear. Thank you to all of you guys who have subscribed. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much. That's all for me for today. I will see you soon. Bye for now.